Hi. Well, you have passed the halfway point in this video series. There are a total of 12 videos, and this is the 7th video. Remember, we did 2 videos for Chapter 2. This week, we look at reading. This is going to be an important chapter because reading is given so much emphasis in typical EFL classes in Japan. So without further ado, let's have a look. Here's our schedule for this week's video. As you can see, there are quite a few more topics than usual to cover. However, we need to cover a few more topics here because reading is such an important skill. As we can see on page 135, reading is not only useful for academic and professional purposes, it also provides a wide range of language input, helps develop vocabulary and grammar, and gives information about the day-to-day lives of L1 speakers and their cultures. As we have already discovered, understanding foreign cultures is a vital aspect of successful communication. So this chapter is going to give us a few ideas on how we can help our students improve their reading skills. I'm sure you can guess what our first discussion topic is. It is, of course, what is Adrian's favorite kind of dog? Aha! Did I trick you? No, actually the first topic is the same as always. What do you do in your regular English studies to improve your reading skills? Make a list of your strategies for improving your reading skills and be ready to share them in class. And just in case you were wondering, my favorite kind of dog is a bulldog. Isn't it gorgeous? On pages 134 and 135, you'll find 7 concepts that are important for you to remember in this chapter. We have already covered some of these in earlier chapters. Make sure you understand these concepts as they will help you with your own reading skills, as well as teaching how to read effectively. There are a lot of similarities between listening and reading. You will have already seen this with the concepts of bottom-up and top-down processing. There are also a lot of similarities in the way we read in our first languages and the second language. The clearest difference, however, is, unsurprisingly, with vocabulary. We often get stuck with reading in the second language due to the higher percentage of unknown words and language forms. When reading in our first languages, we can guess the meaning by sounding out the words. However, this is more unlikely in the second language. Therefore, we really need to increase our vocabulary to as high a level as possible to improve our reading proficiency. We now move on to 2 types of second language reading. We have intensive reading and extensive reading. Intensive reading refers to short passages of which students are expected to understand the content as well as its grammar and vocabulary. This kind of reading is often used in grammar translation classes, but students are still expected to cover the passages without translating every word. Intensive reading also refers to times when students study the structure of an essay to see how the author constructed his or her argument. Extensive reading, on the other hand, is associated with the input hypothesis, which of course was promoted by Professor Krashen. In extensive reading, students aim to achieve a general understanding of longer texts and see reading as something to be done for pleasure. The learning part of it comes as a bonus. In extensive reading, skills such as skimming and scanning are often used. It is important to remember that it is best for students to use a combination of intensive and extensive reading in their studies. There are 2 main thoughts when it comes to learning to read in a second language. First, we have the phonics-based approach, which looks at the sounds and symbols of words. The other approach is the whole language approach, which focuses on building vocabulary and guessing the meaning of words based on surrounding discourse. The phonics-based approach involves bottom-up processing, whereas whole language approaches employ top-down processing. Like I mentioned in listening, much research suggests we should use a combination of bottom-up and top-down approaches in reading. Therefore, both of these approaches to reading should be taught in the classroom. Furthermore, cultural understanding is vital to increase your reading skills. Many L2 learners suggest that a lack of vocabulary is one of the main reasons for difficulty in reading. Interestingly, L2 scholars recommend reading as a great way to build your vocabulary. I hope you will take a little time every day to enjoy reading and build your language skills. On pages 138 and 139, we see short explanations of 3 types of reading materials. First, we have realia, which are actual advertisements, magazines, food packaging, and so on from abroad. Second, constructed materials are reading materials based on authentic pieces, but are recreated for the purpose of language learning. Finally, we have graded readers, which can be found in many libraries at educational institutions. These are especially written for the purpose of language learning and often contain only a limited number of common words and structures. As always, we want to give our students reading material that is as authentic as possible, but at the same time meets the needs and interests of all our students. This is not easy, but with improvements in technology and increased availability through the internet, digitalized books are making achieving these goals a little easier. I have a small assignment for you. I would like you to find some online sites, let's say 5, that contain real materials you may be able to use in your reading classes. Create a QR code to access each site so you'll be able to share them with your classmates during the discussion. With so much importance being put on background knowledge when it comes to reading, it is vital that teachers are able to provide such information when necessary. Like listening, passing on strategies will help students a lot, especially in times when you cannot be there to support them. There is a lot of interesting advice in the Sheltered Instruction Observations Protocol, which you can access by scanning this QR code. Teachers can help students increase their background knowledge through brainstorming activities, discussions, and preview questions. Passing on other skills to help reading comprehension, such as scanning and skimming, is also useful. Encouraging students to read and then reread, especially in the case of intensive reading and reading to learn, will also assist them in improving their reading proficiency. On pages 142 to 144, we see a list of guidelines for teaching reading. Like earlier in the course, when we talked about teaching listening, we need to make sure expectations are realistic, both the students' expectations of how much they will understand and when it comes to their reading strategies. We need to guide students in their background knowledge of the reading topic and look for hints in titles, headings, and graphics that may help them understand the content. Asking a few pre-reading questions will also help them predict the content of what they are about to read. Likewise, by asking a few questions about the text once students have finished reading, teachers can help them clearly organize the information they have just read. Passing on strategies for how to use a dictionary and which words to look up will help students improve their understanding of the passage too. When we ask questions about the text, focusing on inference questions, not recall questions, will give us an indication as to whether students have really comprehended the text. We want to provide passages that are authentic and give students time to read and reread the passages when needed. Finally, we can look for digital materials, which may help meet the needs of all our students in the class. Consider these guidelines as we move on to the next slide, where you need to come up with your own reading activity. As we will do in each of our classes about individual language skills, I would like you to create your own original activity to use in class. There are plenty of ideas on pages 144 to 149. I'd like you to create or find a passage that you could use to help students learn how to use the third person. By the third person, I mean sandinsho in Japanese. Make sure you bring in a handout for your activity, including the passage, and organize any pre- or post questions or any other strategies you would use to help students understand the passage and grammar point better. Good luck! Finally, we have assessment and how we can evaluate how well our students have comprehended a piece of writing. First, we see that using pre-reading questions are important because it gives us an indication of students' background knowledge. When asking questions about the text, we want to focus on inference questions as much as possible because they show us just how much students really do understand what they have just read. It is possible to answer recall questions by guessing without actually understanding the passage. Closed tests are often used for assessing reading comprehension. These tests require students to fill in blanks using only 1 or 2 words per blank. There is an example of a closed test on page 150. You could consider one of these for the activity I asked you to prepare in the previous slide. Well, that's it for this week. I somehow managed to get through that quicker than I had thought. If I were to choose one keyword about teaching reading, I would probably say schemata. By this, of course, I mean background knowledge. The more background knowledge our students have about a certain topic, the more likely they will be to understand and enjoy reading. Working to strengthen your students' schemata should be a major goal when it comes to reading instruction. Alright, so make sure you're ready for our usual quiz, have your ideas and opinions set to go, and I'll see you in class.